Welcome back to my channel again. Um, Subscribe. Look for me with a Goldman and Money series or Best Adekola YouTube. In this series, I'm going to be talking about 10 stocks or 10 companies that have been impacted by the recession and by the financial crisis or stock market crisis pains that we're going through. So I want to present them as opportunities or as points of caution with regard to how you invest, and the companies that you invest in. But I have to make this huge disclaimer that this is just my own effort to understand the current situation, and this is not in any form or sense a financial advice. So I talked in the past in the others part of this series about 10 points impacting the stock market, as well as the micro and the macro economies. So this is connected to that in the sense that I'm examining the effects of this in these companies. Some of them are the behemoths of American companies, and some are also in their own rights very large companies, blue chips, companies that are thought to be strong enough to weather any kind of economic downturn. So from the and then I'm going also to relate them to what's going on in China, basically, because the Chinese economy is the second largest economy, and whereas China is the number one producer of goods and services or manufacturer of goods and distributor of goods across the world. So if China is going through this crisis, starting with the collapse of the real estate, and they are also continue with their zero COVID policy, shutting down manufacturing centers and cities and so on, and also having drop in their GDP. All of those things that constitute the hallmark of big trouble in the economic field. How do these things impact American companies, an American financial system, and American stock market? That's the background to my examination of these 10 companies. It's important that we link what's going on here with what's going on in China, even though the way we are combating the way those problems manifest in each of these countries might be slightly different, as well as the approach and the policies of the government and the central banks of these countries, the way they are handling these situations also may be different. But they are facing the same headwinds. We call it headwinds. And they are interpreting it into their own context, political, cultural, economic, and they are also combating it in different ways. And there's no country that I know of or that I can talk about in the world whose economy can be easily impacted by what's going on in China than the United States of America, because America is so much involved in China, in China's economy, and actually more than ordinary average American can understand, and more than we can actually realize. So that being said, and putting that at the background, we begin to see how these companies have performed. So I take from the tech sector a couple of companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google. Apple, Microsoft, and Google. There's no doubt that these are behemoths, that these are our largest companies with about trillion companies. I talked about these companies before, or some of them. Apple is the largest to the tune of about 3 trillion, and Microsoft about 2.5 trillion plus, and so on. So, but what we need to realize is that these companies are also, to a very large extent, Chinese companies. What do I mean by Chinese companies? They rely on China for much of the materials that they use to manufacture their goods. And some of these goods are actually manufactured on the ground in China. But that's not all. Much of their sales and revenues also come from China. And this is very true, especially about Apple and about Microsoft and perhaps Google, much less true than for Microsoft, Apple, and other companies that I'm going to examine later. So it's been said that Apple is probably like up to 50-60% reliant on China, both for the manufacturing and for sales, for proceeds, for revenue. And so each of them has over 45, averagely between 45 to 55 China reliant. So that can tell you that what we're doing here is not enough to correct the drop in the valuations of these companies. And I told you that they lost money that could be put together, that could be in trillions, tens of billions, if not hundreds, and collectively hundreds of billions. So, but the important thing now, what's more important for us is that is the question as to, okay, what are those other companies that could be alternatives to these ones? Probably not. None. Probably there are no better alternatives that is as strong, that is as well established, that has all of those criteria of good companies, especially in bad economic times. They are the ones with the largest what you call equity to debt ratio. They are among the most profitable companies. They have less debts. They have all kinds of things, all of those things that are very essential for companies to survive in situations like this. So there still know a lot of better companies than these ones. Therefore, whether you invest in them or you don't invest in them, you must have those facts and bear those facts in mind. And of course, they are also the most likely the quickest to make a rebound after going through any crisis. So for us, the question might not even be big, but for the big monies, for the whales, who are looking for ways to protect their money, because we invest in the market for three things. We invest to grow our wealth, we invest to protect our wealth, and we invest to keep our money. Sometimes one of them may apply to you more than the others, depending on your level on the ladder. So, but those who have wealth, they need a place to keep it or save it or to protect it, from them losing it. The bank, through the even we thank God that we're not interested in bank interest. The bank interest is nothing for the wealthy people. But investing opportunities and better ways that the investment and the stock market provides is what they're looking for. So that's all we need to know about that. So let me go to the next setup. Then the next one that I want to consider is from the e-commerce, and that's the behemoth, the giant, the banger, Amazon. The problem with Amazon is that, as I said before, Amazon lost about, I could still say, about 30 to 33% of its valuation. That's big money lost for the company, for the investors. So, but is Amazon going to rebound quickly? I don't think so. But also, is Amazon still a good investment opportunity? Yes. If possible with capital, yes. The reason why Amazon may not rebound quickly can be summarized first in the fact that China is in crisis, and Amazon in this case is a Chinese company. Maybe about 60% of the merchandise that Amazon's empire is sitting on is produced from China. And a great percent of it is also consumed in China. And once China is in this situation, you don't expect a quick turnaround for Amazon. Well, come back to the United States of America. Amazon had its best days during the pandemic. As you can see now, people are going out, going to shop in the stores. And in fact, as a result of the fear of recession, they are spending less on they are not just buying anything. And also they don't, even though statistics has shown that America still has a lot of money, consumers still have a lot of money, and they're still spending, but they're spending kind of rather selectively. But the fact that I'm trying to bring out here is that there is no largesse or free money coming from either the Trump administration, who first gave us that money when the pandemic hit, or the Biden administration that doubled it and continue. So there's not a lot of free money, and therefore all of this is impacting Amazon's business. We can see that. So, but as I said also, Amazon is a very good company, clever, forward-looking, proactive. Actually is a diversified company. And so they are in control of the cloud, they are in control of data, they are in control of business, and they're still having the largest share, more than lion's share of the market. Therefore, you cannot write them off easily. And then you can, not just like you can write them off easily, you can find much better alternative. But in terms of, expecting a drastic or expecting a parabolic move in their share price and their business, whatever, I think Mr. Is that Zuckerberg? Jeff Bezos, he knows better. So he's not expecting that. He's probably not expecting that quickly. So the next one is the EV sector with Tesla. Tesla is very difficult to evaluate because Tesla is a company that has metamorphosed into so many other companies. So that has morphed into so many other companies. And so what the analysts are saying about the PE ratio and all of those metrics that are standard metrics for evaluating the profitability and reliability of a company as an investment opportunity, Tesla is going to throw them off. So what we can say about Tesla, though, is that Tesla too is facing some headwinds. Nevertheless, is still better than the next company that I want to mention, GM. But the reason that I'm actually including this in is because one of my very trusted instructors and elder and an elderly of my instructors, Gary Gregmeyer, he just told us that he liquidated his positions in all of these companies. And this used to be his greatest convictions. So for him to come around and say he's selling them off and he's staying in cash, that sends shivers into the spines of investors and people that listen to him, follow him. I think he's right in a sense, but I also think that it might be wrong too, and therefore I wouldn't consider that to be the ideal model for understanding and for reacting to what's going on. Sorry, Carrie. So from the fintech sector, I've identified two huge or rather important companies: the PayPal and Square. PayPal and Square. This involved me in researching these companies. I wanted to know, are these operate like banks or like credit card issuing companies? And I'm convinced I'm able to settle on the understanding and no. The real operation or the main operation of these companies is to facilitate financial transactions, to make sure that you are able to pay, you are able to buy goods and pay for it. Those who issue credit cards for you, those are the banks, and those are the ones that deals with interest and all these things. For these people, PayPal, Square, MasterCard, Visa, their major operation is to facilitate that international financial transactions. So they are not the one charging interest. If you are paying interest, don't blame it upon them. Or whether they actually benefit from interest that the banks charges, that their clients, which are now the banks charges, that will be something indirect, and that's not what they are doing. So there's much more about this to say and to learn and to know about, especially for religious investors. So I'm kind of tend to lean towards that these are good companies, but I also come to that realization because the financial sector is a huge sector, and what I just learned about how much money is being exchanged around the world, it will surprise you. SWIFT, the financial system, processed maybe over 3 trillion transactions in 2021, and for the first time I came upon quadrillion, and that's the magnitude of transaction that was done through the Chinese main financial institution. So whether there's a recession or there's even something less than recession that I was trying to discuss in the first part of this, there's going to be a minimum financial transaction that was going to be going all around the world. And therefore, those companies that are positioned to benefit from this. So that even makes me to look at PayPal and Square as very tiny companies. But I'm going to choose Square and prefer and privilege Square for a few sentimental reasons. One, the CEO of Square is interested in Africa and in Nigeria especially, and I've heard him talk about financial transactions of the economy, market investment opportunities and so on and so that. I like that. Another thing is that the capitalization is smaller than that of PayPal, giving it a larger room for growth. and also is, well, of course, that's risky, dangerous. It's involved in the Bitcoin. And investing in Square could be an indirect way to invest in the crypto ecosystem, or in Bitcoin especially. So those are some of the companies. I think I've covered about 7 or 8. Now let me talk about the ubiquitous American companies of Walmart, Target, and any other one that may be close to that. So these companies too, they are going to they are facing headwinds, and they're going to struggle. They have a struggle ahead of them. So what I've seen personally, as somebody who uses or who shop at Walmart, is that the prices of groceries, food items have been jacked up. And I can understand. I've previously discussed the breakdown in the food supply chain, because the wheat and a lot of these things come from Russia, come from Ukraine, or along that line. Okay, so I've noticed that the groceries, food items and stuff have been jacked up. So whereas items like clothing, textile, and all of these other things, because nobody is buying much of this at this time anymore. People just they are prioritizing their consumption habit. Food is a must, is a necessity. And and also the way the distribution line or the supply chain line for food has been kind of tightened, or there's been problem there, and so they're trying to offset the losses in other merchant aspects of their areas of their business by jacking up the prices in the other ones. You have to be careful, and if you can find local groceries that could be cheaper, it's time that you look for it. So the Chinese effect is also affecting them, and so because they've gone through a whole lot of reshuffling, a lot strategizing, and so on, and it looks like it's working somehow. But you listen to the financial state, if you have read the financial statements of any of this company, or listen to their earning calls, which happen during the earning call seasons, you can understand and you can appreciate the point that I'm raising better. Nevertheless, you can still shop selectively in these companies, and you can still keep investing in them, because you can shun them at a time when others are doing good, not at the time of when the good news, bad news really work, but at a time when good news doesn't work and bad news work, even make things even worse, you probably don't have a better way to go. So let me conclude with 2 other companies, Dollar Tree and Dollar General. These are overlooked companies. They are doing good. They're going to do good. And there's also indications that they may stay doing good, especially in the recession. And I'm so surprised. And I first noticed that when the pandemic hit, because that these people now shop the long lines in these shops, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, and all these consumer items stores. So people get cheaper things for cheaper price, and essential things that they need. And I could say this to myself, that these are things like overlooked companies, and they're probably the good ones that you can stay with at this time. So let me conclude with what Jerome Powell is doing in terms of raising interest rate and all kind of things. This is going to continue because we've seen the power of the Federal Reserve. I have never imagined that in an economy that we consider to be free market, that the bank and the central bank as well as the government can do a lot to control inflation. And they can, in fact, do it careless of whatever is going to happen to the economy. In the third world countries where we have accepted the concept but without paying good attention, inflation is allowed to have a field day and to rise to any level, and the government and the central bank and all of these things, they are not able to control it. But it's surprising that in a country like the United States, in a market like this of the United States of America, the government, but more importantly, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is doing making all these efforts and taking all these measures. So it becomes clear to us that the market is actually controlled by the government, even though we are in an open economy. I had a couple of analogies of comparing those of us in the stock market, beginning with the ways and the institutions and coming down to retail investors. We're just like kids walking in the park at the mercy of the mom or dad who's giving us candies, who's giving us water and letting us continue to have the party, and who can step in at any time and say, you got to get back to seriousness or back to business, and there's nothing anyone can do. انظر كيف فضلنا بعضهم على بعض وللآخرة أكبر درجات وأكبر تفضيلا. There's more to be done in the analysis of those verses that I cited at the first part. I'm going to talk about As-Sa'yu. I'm going to talk about Iradatul Ajila, wanting the worldly, fleeting worldly things, and issues about the grammatical and the contextual and if you like, all kind of things that are involved in these things from Tafsir and from my own imaginative mind. So we're going to do that perhaps in a separate presentation. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Bye-bye.